Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Ashley Gatewood, the Communications and Marketing Manager at CFRE International, and I'm joined today by my colleagues Paul Cavazos and Christine Johnson, who are going to be answering your questions on the back end. So you'll see that you have a GoToWebinar panel, and you can go ahead and send your questions to us via that panel. All lines are muted, and when you type your question into the pane, we will treat them all as anonymous. Where applicable, we'll stop periodically throughout today's presentation to answer those questions and during a few Q&A breaks. Any questions you have regarding your specific situation, so for instance, if you have a question around how many education points a conference you attended in 2017 counts for, or something very specific to you, on today's webinar, because sometimes they take us a little bit of time to look into. Ask them specific questions to succeed@cfre.org, and we will come back to you quickly. Today's webinar is being recorded, and you will receive a link to the recording within 24 hours. So again, thank you for joining us today, and we're going to start with a couple of FAQs. The first is the cost of the CFRE initial application, and that's $870 at the regular rate and $700 at the participating organization rate. And I'll talk in a minute about what a participating organization is. Presentations for employers or as part of your job do not qualify for continuing education points. I'm going to reference a few things today, like our test content outline, our glossary, and our candidate handbook, and all of those are available on our website. I'll also send you a follow-up email that has a link to the recording on items, so if you had a chance to look at them yet, we will make sure that they're very readily accessible for you. And today's session is going to count for one continuing education point in the non-fundraising education section, so it's great. You'll be earning a point as you're with us today. We'll start by looking at who CFRE International is. We are the independent nonprofit certifying body that runs the CFRE certification. So people sometimes think that the CFRE is administered by AFP or another, and that's not the case. It is administered solely through us. And we work with 29 participating organizations around the world. AFP, ALDI, the Canadian Association of Gift Planners, Fundraising Institute Australia, lots and lots of organizations. And so if you're a member of one of those organizations, that's when you can get that $700 special rate on your initial certification. There are currently over 6,800 CFREs worldwide in 25 countries, so we are truly a nation. I'll give you a quick overview of what the CFRE credential is. We're the only, or it is the only internationally recognized credential for fundraising professionals. So there's no other certification in this space that is accredited and internationally recognized. We've been around since 1981. And we are a third party that validates your experience and knowledge. And I think that's really important because when you go into a job interview and you're up against other candidates and everyone's going into that job interview saying, hey, you know what, I'm really awesome. Well, what's backing that up, right? What proof do you have that validated and that you have the body of fundraising best practice knowledge that you claim you do? Well, CFRE is going to validate that for you as you become a CFRE. We have requirements that every applicant must meet in the areas of professional practice, professional performance, and education. And we'll get into that in the coming slides. Sometimes people say, hey, Ashley, this seems like a lot of work to become a CFRE. And know why people go through this process? Well, it's a good question, and there are many reasons why people go through it. One is that it's a measure of your competence. I did a survey a few weeks ago to everyone that became a CFRE in 2019, and we asked them what the main reason was that they became a CFRE. The number one reason given was that people wanted to demonstrate their fundraising knowledge to their colleagues, board, donors, and beyond. So we really are that seal that you have demonstrated a level of competence in fundraising. Obviously, that's going to add to your credibility, right? Again, how do you have the proof in the pudding? You're a CFRE. Many people do the CFRE for career advancement. I know somebody that earned their CFRE about 2 years ago. She put it on that she was a CFRE, and within 2 days, she had a recruiter contact her, and she had never been previously contacted by a recruiter. So if you are looking to advance your career, move into a different kind of organization, get a promotion within your organization, take on more responsibilities, the CFRE is a great, great way to help prepare you for that. Commitment, we all know that this industry has a lot of people that come in, and then a couple of years later, they have left. The CFRE is that you are showing your commitment to the sector. You've gone through the process, and you are looking to have a sustained career within fundraising. Recognition, obviously we're recognizing what you have achieved and your body of knowledge, but we did a survey in 2018 that showed that 94% of CFRE certificates reported enhanced credibility with employers and/or clients. So that is something that everybody wants, right? We all want to have enhanced credibility with the personal satisfaction is another huge reason why people attain their CFRE, and over 90% of CFREs in a survey told us that they had an immense feeling of personal satisfaction upon earning their CFRE. There are added benefits. When I showed that slide that 6,800 people are CFREs, this is not essential. Very few fundraising professionals hold a fundraising. So when you are a CFRE, it very much speaks loudly, and you do stand out in the hiring landscape. Again, we're a third party. We're validating your experience and professional development. You can add to grant applications and donor conversations that you have a CFRE on your team. I've had a number of CFREs tell me they have a conversation with a major donor. They hand that donor their business card. The business card says that they're a CFRE, and the donor says, what's a CFRE? And it's an entrance to have that conversation. And I've heard time and time again that CFREs tell us, donors say, oh my gosh, that's great. That's exactly the kind of person I want to work with. I feel really great about this. So it does come up in conversations, and it's a great tool for you to have. Ethics and accountability have never been more vital. Every week, we see something about a scandal in the nonprofit world. This is top of mind for donors. This is top of mind for grant makers, because you do have to agree to abide by the Donor Bill of Rights and the ethics as part of your CFRE. This also gives people a sustained amount of the feelings towards you that you do take ethics and accountability very seriously. All right, so now we're going to talk about how to get started. And I have a slide here, so you'll just take a look at the slide. This breaks down the pieces of the certification process. And the first thing is to start your application, and you'll input your information in there. And then from inside the application, that's also when you're going to select your test window. And I'll show you what those test windows are. You'll double check your application, and then ready to submit it. So it's completely free to start your application. You can log in and out of it as many times as you want, and you only pay when you are ready to submit it. At that point, our staff reviews your application. Once it's approved, you will receive an email with information on scheduling your exam. Then you'll sit for the exam at your nearest testing center. And again, I'll show you how to find your testing center a little later today. And then once you pass the exam, you're a CFRE, and you recertify every 3 years. If you haven't yet started your application, This is a screenshot of our homepage, and we have a few. If you come to this login menu here and My CFRE there, or also here in the middle of the screen, clicking either one of those will take you over to the form so you can start your application. Inside your application is the education section. And this is where you are going to document the 80 points of education that you've earned within the last 5 years. We do have one exception to this about the 5-year rule, and that is academic degrees. We will give you 10 points for any academic degree that's a bachelor's, a master's, a doctorate, or a JD. And for instance, myself, I have a bachelor's of English from 2002, so I would get 10 points for that. Any year, any major. We will also give you 5 points if you have an associate's degree. So a lot of people find that this process with 0 points. The bulk of your points will come from attending conferences, workshops, seminars, and webinars typically. You earn 1 point per hour that you're in instruction. So if I go on a workshop for how to engage major donors better, and it runs from 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m., 2.5 hours, I'm going to get 2.5 points. We do need to be very mindful, though, that we act out breaks. So if you go to a conference and say, hey, you know what? I was in 8 hours of conference time, we will return that to you in your application, because I don't think there's really any conference where for 8 hours you're not going to get a break. So usually a day at a conference ends up working out to be more like 5.5, 6 hours. So just take a look at that conference agenda and subtract out those networking breaks. It'd be great if we could give you points for the cocktail reception. Unfortunately, we can't. So just keep all of that in mind. There are a couple other ways that you can earn these education points, and a popular way is to present. If you present at conferences, workshops, seminars, or on webinars, you will earn 2 points per hour presenting. So we all know if you present at a conference, oftentimes you can get a discounted rate to attend the rest of the conference, get a free registration. And then if you sit in on other sessions at that conference where you present, you can earn 1 point per hour there. So speaking at a conference can have a lot of benefits and really help you move the needle towards earning those points. Now, let's say I've made a new presentation and it is all about how to woo corporate sponsors. Next time I present this, I'm going to actually earn 3 points per hour. And that's only one time, right? The first time I present it, and then every time thereafter, I will earn 2 points per hour. If you author articles or books, they cannot be self-published, and we have a couple requirements around their length, but we can also award points for that. Service learning is our term for volunteering, and this is a fantastic way to earn those points as well. If you volunteer, we'll give you 1 point per year per organization that you volunteer. So if I wrap presents for Toys for Tots in December, I will get 1 point per year per org. And if I've done that the last 5 years, then I'm going to get 5 points for that. If you serve on a board or committee and have a volunteer leadership role with a nonprofit, you will earn 2 points per year per org. And we can take up to 10 points for your volunteering activities towards your education. We will also be able to award points for non-fundraising related courses. We know that there are many courses that you can go on, such as managing staff, learning the ins and outs of Excel, maybe it's something about how to be a better public speaker. All of those things, while not fundraising related, will help you be a more effective fundraiser. And so we can take up to 10 points for those. people often have questions about if their education course qualifies. So firstly, remember, if it's something that's not an academic degree, it does need to be within the last 5 years. You want the content to relate to the fundraising as defined by the CFRE test content outline. And again, that's on our website. The test content outline breaks down everything that's on the CFRE exam, and that's why we heavily recommend that you attend items that ladder up to what's on the test content outline. So if you decide to do, say, 70 hours in corporate sponsorship, right, out of the 80 points you need, that's not going to prepare you as well for the exam as if you look to attend things that cover the breadth of items on the test content outline, right? So maybe you want to go to a half-day training on ethics. Maybe you want to go to a conference. So that test content outline can really help guide the education that you embark on. You'll want to document that exact amount of time that you spent in each session by subtracting out those breaks and networking time. And then you want to ask yourself if the presentation was related to your employment requirements. If I do a training for my board on how to make donor thank you calls, that is not going to count as me presenting a session because that's what I'm doing as part of my job. So that's an example of something that would be a presentation that would fit within inside your employment requirements and therefore would not count in education. We are coming up to our first question break here, so I'm going to check in with my colleague Paul and see if he has had any questions come in.
Thanks, Ashley. We have a few questions coming in. One of the frequent questions that I've been receiving is, does the education, either attending or presenting, have to be CFRE pre-approved to be eligible?
Excellent question, and it does not have to be pre-approved. You will oftentimes see education that says it's been approved for CFRE credit, and that just means that the organizer has sent us all the materials so we know exactly what that course entails and exactly how many points you'll receive for it. But if you go on some kind of a training that hasn't been pre-approved, if it's fundraising related, there's an excellent chance that it's going to count.
Great. What happens if my application is rejected?
Oh, very good question. If your application is sent back to you, you will be given information on what we need to see. So it's oftentimes because some piece of information is missing. And you will then be able to resubmit it once you have included that information, but there is no penalty for doing that, essentially. So we're not going to charge you anything. There's no fee for that. So let's say you pay that $700 initial application fee, you submit it, and we return it to you. When you resubmit it, you will not be prompted for any kind of payment.
Great. Next question is, a degree required to apply?
Nope, you do not have to have a degree to apply at all.
Perfect. Another question we have is regarding webinars, and this question is specifically, how are webinars entered into the application? Are they considered a class or academic course?
Paul, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically any university level education that you attend that results in semester credit toward a degree being earned, those are the only types of items that you can consider an academic course. So academic courses are university level classes that give you credit toward a degree. Everything else in the application is going to be listed as a class, including webinars or a conference. So keep that in mind. With the academic course category, you do receive 15 points per semester credit. So if you take a 3-credit course, that's 45 points. So that's why you want to be very careful on how you're listing your education. Again, most of the items will be either a class or a conference.
Very good.
And I have one more question, and someone is asking for clarification between the difference between CEUs and other general terms for points being earned for the application.
Okay, do you want to take that one, Paul, since you've reviewed these?
Yeah, no worries. So the term CEU is really interchangeable. We use that interchangeably with just points, contact hours. It's all really the same thing. You earn 1 point per hour of attendance, and again, that we use those terms interchangeably. So if you hear CEU, that stands for Continuing Education Unit. Again, that's just the same thing for CFRE application. It's 1 point per hour.
Excellent.
Great, thanks.
All right. So we'll keep moving forward, and Paul and Christine will continue to answer your questions on the back end, and we do have 2 more question breaks coming up. The next piece of the application is professional practice. This is essentially you working, and you need to have worked 36 months out of the most recent 5 years. We look at 1 month of employment as 1 point, and that's where you're going to get those 36 points from. And at least 50% of your job must be fundraising related. So if I wear the marketing hat and I wear the fundraising hat, I need to be fundraising 50% of the time. If I work part-time, 20 hours a week, 100% of my time must be related to fundraising in order to count. Professional performance is looking at the funds that you have raised in the job, and we require 55 points. Again, we're looking at the last 5 years. This third bullet point here about actual funds raised. So 1 point equals 25,000 US dollars, and that US dollars applies no matter where in the world you are. So if I'm living in Singapore, I will, and we have a calculator inside the application for this, or I'm living in Great Britain, I'm going, wherever I am, I'm going to have to do the calculation inside the application for what this is in US dollars. And the reason for that is we are accredited. So when we say someone's a CFRE, they have raised the exact same amount of money, no matter where in the world they are, no matter what currency they're on, no matter how currencies are fluctuating up and down. We always have this one piece that we know we've measured everybody against. If you're from a small shop, or maybe you haven't hit having 1.375 million US dollars, which is what this works out to be, we have 2 other ways that you can earn points in this category, and that's management projects and communications projects. And I'll talk about those in a couple slides here. But what we're going to look at here is the fundraising of the team you're on. There's no way for us to say, okay, Natasha, on that last direct mail piece that went out that brought in $400,000, Natasha brought in $140,000 of that, and Jerry brought in $80,000 of that, right? We don't know because we're all working on this team together. So when we look at this funds raised, we're looking at the team you're on over the last 5 years. When we talk about those presentations and trainings as part of that, is what's going to count under performance. So I'm going to show you an example here. This is off our website. This is an example of a management project. So if you look at your screen, you'll see that we've taken out all the identifying information here. But you can go to our website and see examples of management projects that have counted, and this will give you a really firm idea of what these look like. I'm going to now go over to a communications project. The communications project has to be something, well, a project has to be something with a start and end date. So if I overhaul my e-newsletter, right, top to bottom, redo it, zhuzh it up, and it goes out into the world, and now I'm bringing in an extra $90,000 a year in donations through this. That's a project. Me hitting send every Thursday on my e-newsletter, that's not a project, because that's my job. So just keep that in mind when you look at the projects here. And you may not need to use a project to hit that 55-point total, but if you do, we are very supportive, happy to help you, and these projects are a great way to earn those points. On the application, so those are the 3 main pieces of the application that you're going to fill out. When you have information, and like I said before, you can log in and out of it as much as you like. We very much encourage you to start your application early, even if you're just considering CFRE, right? Even if you're like, yeah, I'm kind of on the fence about this. Start your application because you're going to want to track all of the education that you go on. You watch a webinar tomorrow on your lunch hour, go ahead and put it in the education section of your application. That way, if you decide to go forward with your CFRE, it's already there, you're ready to rock and roll. And then the other thing is, and we don't mind if you use us, that's totally fine, you can actually, as you document everything in there, use that as your own personal tracker for everything you've attended. And that matters because when you have your next performance review, you can go in there and say, okay, you know, here's everything that I attended in 2020, education-wise, and take that to your boss, because who the heck, you know, come December can remember everything that they attended over 12 months. So just make sure that you're logging everything nicely in there as you go along. We've touched on the cost before. So if you think, okay, I'm going to submit my application in January of 2021, you might want to look to see if you can get your employer to put earmarked funds for that next year, or if you have professional development budget this year, you may want to have that conversation to see if your boss will be open to you applying some of those monies towards that. We've had, I think it's 51 or 52% of current CFREs tell us that their employer put some or all of the money needed toward their initial application cost. So that is definitely in line to have that conversation. One of the things that can really, really drag a person down in this process is documentation. Hang on to those agendas. Our recommendation, personal email, not your work email. Start a folder, call it CFRE Proof, and that is where you can forward all of your webinar registration confirmation emails, conference agendas, all of that good stuff, because I will just tell you, if you're keeping that all in a work email and you put your 2 weeks in at your job, the last thing you're going to think about is making sure you get all of that proof out. And you will be very glad that you have it in a personal email that you can always access. A few application tips here. Absolutely update your application a little at a time. It is a disservice if you just think, okay, I'm not really doing anything Sunday night. Let me just do my whole application in one go. It's very hard to remember all of the education that you went on for the last 5 years. So just keep plugging away and add things a little bit at a time. Definitely keep your email and postal address in your CFRE account current. The CFRE, we're going to email your physical certificate to the address on file, and we do not want to send that to a place you lived 2 apartments ago. If you'd like to add a few extra points, we have no problem at all with that. So if you hit 80 points of education and then you go on 2 more webinars that were each a point, and now you're going to submit it with 82 points, that's totally fine. And that way, if something doesn't count for some reason, you have a little bit of a buffer. We also ask that you don't guess. Paul and Christine are incredibly easy to work with. They are very happy to work with you on this. So feel free to contact them with any of your questions before you submit your application. We also have an ability for Paul to review your application before you submit it. So if you've got it kind of like ready to roll, but you feel like, oh, I think I feel better about this process if Paul looked it over, we can absolutely do that for you. That is no problem. And just to clarify, so you need 3 years of work experience out of the most recent 5 years. I think our questions come up a little. Okay, so always contact us with questions. We're very easy to work with, very responsive. We're going to look at some important dates remaining for this year. So if you have a look at your screen here, you will see we have 3 application deadlines remaining in 2020. And at the end of each application deadline starts the test window. This is when you can go to the testing center and sit for the exam. So we don't offer the exam 365 days a year. We offer it through 4 different test windows annually, and these are the 3 that remain for this year. Once you submit your application, you will have 1 year to sit for the exam. However, let's say I really think, okay, I need to become a CFRE, I got to get this show on the road, I'm going to sit for my exam on May 1. So the last day that you can submit your application for that is April 15th. So that first deadline date is always going to be the deadline to be able to sit for the exam in the test window that directly follows that. All right. And now we've come to our next question break. Paul, do we have anything?
Yeah, we have a few questions. So one question that came in was in reference to the 5 years that you mentioned in terms of application eligibility, is it still acceptable to apply if you only have 3 years of experience?
Yeah, if you have those 36 points, then that's fine.
Yeah, but adding to that, I would say that keep in mind the exam is designed at a 5-year level. So while the minimum requirement is 36 months, keep in mind you'll be tested at the 5-year level. Okay, next question is, if somebody is presenting and attending a conference at the same time, how should they indicate that in the application?
Yeah, great question. So inside the application, there is a place where you can insert the conference and say that you're an attendee, and then you would have another entry for presenting at that conference. So essentially it would be 2 separate entries.
Yeah, that's correct. And adding to that again, please keep in mind that if you do present at a conference and attend, as Ashley mentioned, be sure to list those as separate entries. And the reason is you do get points awarded at different ratios for the time you spent presenting versus the time you spent attending. So can I use volunteer items as professional performance and practice?
No, but Paul, do you want to explain?
Sure. So I think in this instance, if you're unemployed or if you're just getting started and you're trying to look back at the past 5 years to fill out the application, unfortunately, you cannot use any professional practice or performance that have been volunteer, that were done on a volunteer basis. Practice and performance are designated only for times that you were employed and doing fundraising for your employer. What you can use during times of unemployment is the education that you attend. So whether you're employed or unemployed, as long as you continue to attend that fundraising related education, that is still all eligible. Okay, so as an individual fundraiser who also works on a team, do I list my team's performance or my individual funds that were raised specifically by me?
So that would be the team that we're looking at there.
Well, yes, that is correct. So you have to consider 2 things. One, anytime you're a part of a team effort, everyone on that team effort can list those same funds if there was no specific portion or solicitation that you were responsible for. But if there was something specific that you were responsible for within that team effort, you do want to list only the funds that you were responsible for as your performance. Okay, and that's all for now.
Okay, great. And I saw there were some questions here about the test window and when you can take the exam in the test window. And that's whenever the test center is open. So it would usually be a Monday through Saturday, that any time within that test window that you would be able to sit for the exam. Okay, and now we'll talk about the exam for a little bit here. It's probably the thing that people have the most trepidation about with this process. And I have to just emphasize, please do not be afraid of the exam. It is very straightforward. It's 200 multiple choice questions, and there are 4 possible answers for each question. So the correct answer is in front of you, and we are looking for the best answer. And a lot of times people get tripped up on that because they'll look at those 4 possible responses and they'll think, oh, 2 of these look correct. But what we're looking for is the best, most donor-centric answer. The exam is developed by people currently working in fundraising. This isn't a bunch of people that retired 15 years ago that are out at what's going on. These are all people who are currently employed in fundraising roles. The exam is global, so whether I sit for the exam in Vancouver, Sydney, Beijing, it's the same exam, no matter where in the world I'm going to sit for it. The scores range from 200 to 800, and 500 is the pass mark. That 500 is firm, so if you miss it by 1 or 2 points, we are not able to Rochambeau anything. It has to be at least 500 points to be considered a passing score. And we are accredited, so we absolutely must have the same markers for everybody, and we are not able to have any flexibility on that passing score. You have 4 hours to sit for the exam, and I can tell you right now, most people do not take the full 4 hours. You will have a buffer time. There's not a set number of answers that you have to get right to get that 500, because the different questions have different weights to them. So I can't tell you, you have to get X in those 4 hours. A great thing about the exam is that you can move inside of it. It is all done on a computer, and each question is numbered. So let's say on question 19, I get really hung up and I think, geez, I really have no concept what this answer is. If I get to question 122, maybe that's going to jog my memory about question 19, and I can go back to question 19 and answer it. It also means that because you can go back, if you finish the exam with 40 minutes to spare, you can go back and you can just start checking your work. So the time that we give you is definitely doable. The exam covers 6 knowledge domains. And the knowledge domains right here, I don't have any sample questions in this presentation, but this will give you a good concept of what topics are covered. So when you look at your screen now, you will notice that securing the gift and relationship building together comprise 49% of the exam. No matter who you are, no matter how long you've been in fundraising, I cannot emphasize enough, you are going to want to devote study time to those 2 areas. A huge portion of this exam. The test content, each of these in a more granular way. So when I send that email within the next 24 hours, please take a look at the test content outline and you'll see all the nitty gritty that will show you what these items ladder up to. A lot of people are concerned because they don't know what to study. And I can't say, hey, if you read this book, you're going to pass this exam, because everybody is different. Some people will be coming to this exam with 3 years work experience. Some people will be coming to the exam with 28 years work experience. Everybody's different. If you have a more generalized fundraising role, if you've moved around multiple organizations, different sizes, that is a very different experience to a person that has done nothing but major gifts for 18 years. And if you are a person, you know, we get very specialized oftentimes in our careers. If you are in that situation where you've been very laser focused on something, you will want to make sure that you have rounded out your knowledge with these other parts of the test content outline that maybe you don't interact with so much in your day-to-day. So you may have a little bit more studying to do. Ask yourself, when you look at that test content outline, get a highlighter. And you're going to ask yourself, what are you most comfortable with? And what do you have the most experience with? Anything that you don't feel confident you could answer an exam question on, highlight it. If you notice that those areas you highlight kind of cluster into, say, maybe in securing the gift, you can go to our website and the resource reading list will show you which books to read that cover those certain knowledge domains. So we have 14 books on the resource reading list. Please do not read all of them. You can if you feel like it, but that's not what it's there for. Most people read about 1 to 3 books. The exam is about best practices and not rote memorization of facts. Don't think, oh my gosh, I have to memorize all of these definitions. We're not asking you about tax law. We're not asking you about, okay, in Japan, what kind of gift receipt? It's not like that. This is best practices at a global scale. So we're not going to get down into that like very, very nitty gritty stuff on that kind of a level. We're going to be looking at your best practices in your fundraising. These are the online resources we offer on our website. The candidate handbook, test content outline, resource reading list, testing guide, and the glossary are all free. This glossary, I cannot emphasize enough. Please read it. It is the language of the exam. So when we say stewardship, you'll know exactly what we mean. When we say donor, you'll know exactly what we mean. There will be no X factor into like, I don't know, sometimes this definition means a few different things. That glossary is your roadmap to what the language on the exam means. We do offer a practice exam. You do not need to purchase the practice exam in order to pass the live exam, by no means. Many, many people practice the live exam without ever looking at the practice exam, so please do not feel obligated to use the practice exam. I recommend it if, one, you really don't know what you don't know. You look at a test content outline, you go, geez, I really don't know here. Or if you've never taken a test on a computer, or if you have test jitters. The practice exam does not have any questions on the live exam on it, right? It is only there to help you determine where you need to study. It's going to show you what you got wrong, and then you can go and study up on those areas. When you purchase our practice exam, it comes with digital flashcards that look like this. And this can also be a great study tool as well. And it's included in the practice exam cost. There's no additional charge for that. If you have an in-process application, you will have access to CFRE Central, our online community. If you haven't jumped into CFRE Central, I cannot recommend it enough. You will notice, just looking at the screenshot here, that there are a number of threads about people preparing for the exam. It is great because people who were unsuccessful in the exam will get on that forum and the books they think did not work. And I will tell you right now, we have that resource reading list of those 14 books. Do not deviate from that list. People go, oh, I got this Secrets of the CFRE book, and I thought I'd pass just reading that, and then I didn't. If it's not on the resource reading list, it is not guaranteed to help you on the exam. So please stick to that list. You can go in here and see if there are people in your area that might want to study buddy or a virtual study buddy, something like that. This is just a really wonderful free resource to help you prepare. There is no limit on the number of practice exams you can take. It's a subscription model, so you'll either have it for 30 or 90 days. Okay, so if you're going to prepare a study plan, we recommend that you pick days of the week and set a time each of those days. We've heard from a number of CFREs that they actually studied on a lunch break at work because studying at home was a little too hectic. Shut your door, tell people don't bother you, and then you've got an hour. You can read, do your practice exam, whatever you feel. And a lot of people say it's great because they'll read something on their 1 hour lunch hour, and then 3 hours later in the afternoon they're like, oh my gosh, I just learned about this, and then they can apply it to something that they're working on. So people find that to be really beneficial. You're going to determine the knowledge domains that require the most focus. And once you have that, that's when you're going to determine the books you want to read off that resource reading list. You may want to set yourself a page goal each week. I myself am studying for something right now, and I looked at the book and I figured, okay, if I read 7 pages a day, I will finish this book by the time I need to take my exam. And that's been really helpful for me because it's very manageable. 7 pages a day, it's not a killer by any means. So you might want to do something similarly. This sounds really obvious about having a calm, quiet place to study, but we all know that there are very few calm, quiet places in this world anymore. Put your cell phone in another room. Like we said, don't study at home if that's a really wild place for you. If you're going to get interrupted or feel like you might need to put in a load of laundry, right? Just find that good quiet place to focus. When you take the exam, it will be in a center that looks like this one on your screen. It is very, very high security. When you arrive at the testing center, you will have to have your pockets checked. They'll ask you to turn your pockets inside out. You cannot bring your phone, your wallet, anything like that into the test room. There will be lockers. You may want to leave these items in your car. And there is no ability to bring food in unless you have requested a special medical reason for that. There are water coolers, so you can have a drink that way. You cannot bring a water bottle in because people like to cheat by throwing notes inside a water bottle. So just know that you will need to use the water cooler at the center. There are cameras and there are individual testing stations. And all of this should make you feel really good in knowing that we really do keep this exam very, very secure. We do not want anyone to have an unfair advantage in this, and that is the reason for this level of security. When you finish your exam, I'm sorry, I'll wait, that's in a couple of slides. To find your nearest testing center, and I'll just say, please do not ask us this through the question pane here because we cannot answer these questions individually about the testing center. If you go to this URL at the top of my screen here, pearsonview.com/CFRE, you can put in your zip code or your postal code or your city, state, and province, and it will tell you the nearest testing center to you. So for instance, for this one, I put in Atlanta, and you'll see that it's showing me a map of all the testing centers near me, and then there's also this list on the left. So you will know precisely where to find a testing center, and these are everywhere. Pearson VUE really is global. All right, so once you finish the exam, you're going to know straight away if you passed or if you didn't pass. This is going to come up on your screen, and it is not going to show you what you got right and what you got wrong. And that is to protect the integrity of the exam, because we don't want people saying, oh, geez, hey, Rick, I saw that you're going to go sit for the exam in 2 weeks, and I just want to let you know that, you know, when you get this question, the answer is yada, yada, right? So you're not going to be able to see those answers. It takes about 24 hours for the testing center to send us your information. So what that means is you're going to finish the exam and you will know that you are a CFRE before we know that you are a CFRE. We highly recommend that you do not jump on LinkedIn and say, hey, I'm a CFRE until you get your email notification from us. We have to get all the information from Pearson VUE. So if you jump on LinkedIn and you say, hey, everybody, I'm a CFRE, I just passed 5 minutes ago, and then your boss calls us to verify, we don't have that. So you have that email notification from us. If you do not pass the exam, we will email you with information about retaking it. There is a 30-day stand down period until you can retake it, and there is a $375 retake fee. And I've had people say, well, that's a lot of money, that retake fee. And it is. We really want you to pass the first time. You want to pass the first time, we want you to pass the first time. So if you study up really well, you know, don't just throw your hat in the ring and think, geez, I'm not going to study. I'll just roll over the testing center and I'll see how I do. People try that and it does not end well. So please, please, please study. And then you won't have to worry about the retake fee. At the end of those testing windows, right, that we looked at a few slides back, we send every certificate in the mail in a batch. So we will take every person that became a CFRE in that testing window and mail everybody at one time those certificates. And those will go out about 15 days at the end of the testing window. So that's when you can look to receive yours. And in the meantime, what we have is this awesome digital badge that you will receive within 1 week of passing the CFRE exam. And once you have this badge, you can put this in your email signature, LinkedIn, You can do a post on Twitter, whatever you're feeling. So you will have this badge not long after you pass your exam. Recertification happens every 3 years. You will complete an online application. The recertification fee is $510 US or $408 US if you're a member of a participating organization. Okay, let's say I become a CFRE and in 6 months I move to a new job. When I'm negotiating with that job, right, because I know that in 2.5 years I'm going to have to pay this recertification fee, you can have that conversation with your employer and have that built into your job contract. That's not uncommon for people to do that. So you know that fee is coming up every 3 years. You can have that conversation with your employer straight away when you move to a new role, or get it put into your budget. You know, if I know I'm going to need to renew in 2021, I might have that conversation, say, in September of 2020 with my boss. There's no exam required for recertification. So once you pass that exam, you're good. You do not have to sit for another exam with us. Here are the points requirements for recertification. Those 45 points in continuing education, people find, you know, if you are presenting, you can rack those up pretty quickly. Everything in here, because it's across 3 years, is very manageable. You may be aware we have an ambassador program, and this is an opportunity where if you write to me at this email address, share@cfre.org, I will pair you with a current CFRE, and you will be able to ask them questions about how they prepared for the exam, their study tips, if they had any conversations with their boss about having their employer support them. It's just a really great way to talk to somebody who's been through the journey and get their advice. All right, and so with that, I will turn it over to Paul, and we will use our last 8 minutes here for Q&A.
Great, thanks. So I've got a couple of questions, and this is one that I've been getting a lot. So I just want to repeat that if you want to email a request for me to pre-review your application before you submit, please send that to succeed@cfre.org. So this first question is, does the fundraising education have to be outside the types of fundraising that you do as part of your job?
No, the fundraising education that you do, as long as it's fundraising related, will be fine.
Great. And what types of supporting documentation are needed when you apply?
Sure. So for your education, that is going to be your conference programs and agendas, your registration email, like registration confirmation emails. But Paul, do you want to talk a little bit more about when people actually need to provide those?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do not require supporting documentation with your submission. It's an honor-based system. However, we do audit 10% of all applications. So there are 2 instances where you could be asked to provide supporting documentation. One, if there's something in your application that I specifically need the documentation for, just to verify hours or names, things like that, I could ask you to provide a specific piece of documentation. Otherwise, if you are selected for audit, then you absolutely need to provide that supporting documentation. And as Ashley mentioned, yeah, I work one-on-one with candidates during the audit, so the requirement, I do not need to verify every single thing. You can contact me and we can go through it together and identify items from your application that'll complete the audit requirements in a timely and easy manner. Those types of documents can include registration confirmations, certificates of completion. We have forms that you can fill out and have a supervisor sign. You can have the sponsoring organization confirm your attendance. So things like that are eligible. So if you sit on, here's another question. If you sit on a board and offer a training to that board, can that be included as education?
I guess the question is, so it's in a volunteer position?
Yeah,
that
would be, sorry.
Yeah, could you take that one, Paul?
Yeah, that would be my assumption that it's a volunteer position. But again, as Ashley was saying, you know, if you're a volunteer and it's in the presentation you offer, any type of training that you do is not a part of your job responsibility, then yes, please feel free to include that as education, as long as it's fundraising related. Non-fundraising presentations are not eligible ever.
Right, so if you're just talking about how you're moving offices and what that logistical situation would be, that's not going to count.
Right. And there are 2 questions related to the practice exam. The first one is there a limit to how many times you can take the practice exam?
Not at all. So it's either a 30 or 90-day subscription, and you can take it as many times as you like within that subscription. The one thing we always caution against, though, is do not take the practice exam to the point that you memorize it, because people do that and then they'll go, oh my gosh, you know, after 3 weeks of taking this, look, I got 100% of these questions right. I don't need to study, when all they've actually done is memorize the practice exam questions, right? Because it is a finite question bank. So do not use that as your only tool, right? It's only there to help you determine the areas you need to study.
Great. The second question related to the practice exam is it available only in the United States, or is it available globally?
It is available globally. It's fully online.
Perfect. This question is in regards to payment. Do you have to pay before knowing if your application was received?
So you're going to submit your application and pay at the same time. So you do have to pay at the point of submission. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, once you, your payment is required at the time you submit the application. That payment does cover your exam fee as well as the processing and review of your application.
Mm-hmm.
And we have one more question, and that is, what is the pass rate for first-time exam takers?
Sure. So that fluctuates pretty heavily, and I always preface my answer to this saying, I don't know how many folks on this line are familiar with the exam. So that's the project management professionals exam. You know, it feels like every third person in the for-profit world has their PMP. The pass rate for that is about 62 to 64%. Our pass rate fluctuates between 70 and 80%. And I can absolutely tell you from people running up to me at conferences that a number of people who are unsuccessful on the exams have not studied. I had a woman run up to me at a conference and say, I failed your exam the other month and I need to talk to you. And I said, well, can you tell me about how you studied? And she said, I didn't study. I don't have time to do that. If you don't study, it's not going to go well for you. So if you study, you are going to be in pretty good shape.
Those are all the questions I have.
Okay. All right. Great. Well, thank you, everyone, today. We truly appreciate it, and we will look forward to reviewing your application. And if you have any questions or you need anything else, just let us know.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thanks. Bye.